I could go back to lots of different places and the same advice would be relevant, but I would go back to probably around 8-year-old me.
Okay.
And say, it's not your job to fix everything.
Welcome back to another amazing episode of Entrepreneur Unleashed. Today in the studio, I'm joined by Julie Goodall. She's an amazing entrepreneur. You're not going to want to miss any second of it. But before we get started, I just want to let you know, once again, my name is Edward Collins. I'm the host of Entrepreneur Unleashed. And I've put together this podcast specifically for business owners just like you who are looking to shortcut your journey of success. And the best way to do that I've found is to learn vicariously through others. So we're going to jump right in because you're not going to want to miss any seconds. So Julie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is great.
Well, I know that you traveled a little bit of a distance to get here. We're down in our Miami studio, and tell us where you came from.
I came from Fairfax, Vermont.
Okay.
So not even the big city in Vermont, if there is one. A little bit north, probably 30 minutes from Canada.
Okay.
So
a little warmer here.
Difference, yeah.
A little warmer here.
14 degrees when I left, about 80,
goodness.
I think now.
Yeah, just about.
A little different.
Yeah, and we have palm trees.
You do. We have no palm trees in Vermont.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah. Maybe inside in the fake ones, but
Yes.
that's about it.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad you're here. As you know, we set up this podcast to give other business owners the opportunity to learn vicariously through those who have been through it. And Julie, you've been through it.
I've been through it.
I've looked at your bio. We've had conversations. So what I'd like to do is try to frame it up for our audience.
Sure.
Like, tell me a little bit about how you actually got started in business.
Yeah. So I was working for an accounting firm for about 8 years, and I was doing accounting. My mom was an accountant, CFO her whole life, and I hated it. Like, absolutely hated it. Soul crushing. I hope they're not watching right now. I don't mean it. No, but it didn't light me up. I've always been somebody who, I don't want to do things if it isn't fun. And so I was trying to get another job, and I couldn't get hired. And I couldn't get hired. My assumption is I didn't have a degree.
Okay.
And it wasn't for lack of trying. I had gone for physical therapy and decided pretty quick that I didn't want to do that and was afraid of the debt. And so kind of backtracked a little and said, I'll figure it out. And in accounting, they want a degree. And I was really kind of, I got up on my high horse a little bit. I was like, I've been doing this for 8 years. I can do this stuff in my sleep. I know what I'm doing. I'm a good worker. But I had been told by HR people, if you don't have a degree, you literally just go in this pile. You don't even get looked at, right? So I was frustrated. And during this time, I had started some personal training on the side, just for fun, family, friends, that kind of thing. And somebody said to me one day, she's like, you should start a gym. I'm like, yeah, that's great. Don't you have to have, a little bit of money, a little capital to do that? But kind of got the wheels turning. And I was like, why not? I'm passionate about health and fitness, and I just, once I get something in my head, the entrepreneurial thing, right? Like, it's in there, and it just starts percolating. And so I met with a friend of mine who was a branch manager of a bank.
Okay.
And I kind of skipped a few steps.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to go get some funding.
Yeah.
I just need the money. I can figure the rest out, right?
Yeah.
And she said to me, I say this with love, nobody will ever lend to you. You are young. I was under 30. You are female, and you are uneducated. And I took that with a lot of gratitude. I mean, she wasn't saying it maliciously at all. She was being real.
She was coming from a place of love. She
wanted me to not get my hopes up. And so I really appreciate that. But the best way to light me up is to tell me I can't do something. I got a little bit of like petulant child in there. I'm like, oh, all right, you said I can't. Watch this. And so I just started doing the research. I've always been really resilient and really, if I want something, I will make it happen. Okay. Right, from childhood kind of thing. And so I started doing the research, and I met with the SBA, and he said, you need a business plan. And he didn't want to spend a lot of time with me. And I learned later it's because usually when he tells people you need a business plan, they never come back. Right. They realize what's involved in writing a good business plan, and they never come back. And so I went home and I did my due diligence, and a few weeks later I went back with my 42-page business plan, had all my graphics and everything else. And I think he sat there for a good 30 seconds with his mouth open.
Wow.
And that's when he said, he's like, I didn't expect to see you again.
Okay.
And so anyway, I had that figured out, and it was really just the funding. And got that lined up, and I opened my gym. I got my certificate of occupancy 2 days before my 30th birthday.
What year was this again? This was in
2011. Yep.
So this is post the collapse in the economy here in the U.S. Things are starting to rebound, and you're jumping into it.
Yeah.
Now, I've had conversations with business owners, and what you're describing to me seems to fall into that category of grit. Like just doing regardless of what the consequences may be, and just go. Like how did you learn that? Was that something you learned, or do you think that was something that's just part of your nature?
I think both.
Okay.
Little nature, little nurture. But I think I'd been told I couldn't have things before. But I also am somebody who learns pretty quickly, and if I tried hard enough and I worked out, right from negotiating with parents on like, I want to go to this, and they say no because you don't have a ride, you start to like figure out, well, if I do this and I remove all the obstacles, then it can be possible. Okay. And so I think it was a little bit of that. And it's like, okay, I get that you don't want to pay for this. You don't want to take the risk.
Right.
But I am willing to take the risk. So what are my options? And, and there's a little bit of, it's borderline like courage and stupidity, because I really did my due diligence, which included meeting with people who were running successful gyms at the time.
Right.
And the message was, don't do it.
Oh.
There's no money in this.
The margin's pretty challenging.
Right. And especially where I wanted to do it, which was my hometown.
Okay.
And the clientele I wanted to serve. And I heard them.
Okay. And you said,
but I was like a dog with a bone. I was just, nope, I've got to do this. And so, in hindsight, I would have not changed anything.
Okay.
Because that's where I learned what it was to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
I mean, that was, you talk grit. Grit was nothing before opening the doors. Once I opened the doors, it was, okay, I can't afford employees, so I'm working 24/7, which in a gym is just about that, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
actually, cleaning toilets at 9:30 at night and then showing up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I didn't drink coffee my whole life until I opened a gym, and then I was like, I'm going to need something if I'm getting up at 3:30.
That's an interesting thing, because a lot of people, we live in an Instagram society right now, so we all see the unfiltered version behind the scenes, like we see it.
Yeah.
But the world only sees the filtered,
right,
perfectly choreographed, like imagery. Like what was that experience like for you? Like having to put in the grind, having to put in the work. How did you do it? Because you came from an environment where you were working for someone else, and you put in the 9 to 5. Maybe it was in accounting, and so it was more than 9 to 5.
Pretty cushy.
But at the end of the day, like how was that experience for you?
I loved every minute of it.
Okay.
There's something, I think that was the minute that I realized it hits different when you've worked for it. This was mine. Yeah. This was the first experience. Like, I don't mind working hard for other people, and I did. But when you're working hard for something that you want, I wanted to see those doors open because somebody told me I couldn't.
Right.
So I will paint, I will, show up, I will put together equipment till midnight, blood, sweat, tears, literally, I'll do it. And it just felt worth every second of that. Okay. And then when I was doing it, I love to learn. I'm not somebody who ever wants to be done, so learning how to market, learning, okay, what software do gyms use to check people in? Like, how do they keep track of their memberships? How do I get more people to know about this little location? And then, of course, the actual human interaction, which that's always come natural to me. I love people. Right. Relationships are everything, and I didn't realize that was a key element of success in business until way later. I just liked people, all of that was worth it. But there was a point about 12 months in where the burnout creeps in. It's physically, I'm here from 4 a.m. to almost 10 p.m. Yeah. And then there's the drive home. I was a single mom at the time with a 5-year-old.
Oh my goodness.
So there was that
God
whole, and it happened right then too. So it was new. It wasn't even like I'd always been a single parent. There was this learning to parent my child by myself. And she's still young enough that that's not, there's not a lot of, she wasn't really self-sustaining at 5, right?
You're right.
So there was a lot of transition happening in my life. I had given up my house at that point to my ex-husband, so I was a little bit of a nomad, and so there was just a lot going on. And for a while it was okay, and I think the adrenaline keeps you going. And then
But that eventually wears out.
Oh, eventually, yeah, and lack of sleep and stress. And the business, I think, kept me going. I think that period of my life would have been exponentially harder if I didn't have that to focus on.
Let's talk about that, because I want to unpack it a little bit. There are a lot of audience members who may be just thinking about getting started in business. So similar to where you were, going through a transition. Looking back on that time, what would you say was the most impactful thing for that business to be sustained? Like, what was it that got it open and got it going? Like, what skill set should someone be trying to hone in on, figure out, to develop within themselves?
Yeah. I think, I don't know, it's not really a skill set, but I would say passion. You've got to want it.
Okay.
You've got to have that hunger, because if it's just an idea and, you know, somebody else is footing the bill and there's not really any risk involved and it's just sort of like a hobby, even if it's successful, I don't think it's quite the same. You've got to want it. And if you really want it, you've got to be willing to go all in on it. You've got to take the risk that it's not going to work. And not every business is this hard to open. So the one I have currently was not like this at all. So I by no means want to scare anybody from doing it. This was a brick and mortar with equipment, and it needed a lot of startup funding. Not all businesses are like that. But you've got to be resourceful. You've got to be willing to do the research, both in how to get it open, but even when you're open, you're assuming it's a new type of business, you're going to run into things you don't know, that you've never run across, you've never experienced, and you've got to either know who to reach out to or how to find what you need. Because it's not like a W-2 job where you can go ask HR. It's not that easy.
No.
You know, so it's, you've got to want it, and you've got to be willing to work for it and be resourceful, at least in that type.
I talk a little bit about it in terms of this concept of discipline, because discipline is the thing that basically within you that says, listen, I'm going to do all the necessary things, even when I don't feel like it.
Especially when you don't feel like it.
Exactly. There's plenty of times as business owners we don't feel like it. There's plenty of times I don't want to be up at 5:30 or 6 in the morning in order to prep for the particular day, but that is sometimes the necessary thing. So you have to be willing to do the things that are necessary regardless of how you feel about it. When you look at that business, like looking back in retrospect, would you categorize that as a success? And if yes, why? And if no, why?
From a business perspective, I wouldn't categorize it as a success.
Okay.
From a lesson learned, nothing else in my life has ever taught me as much as that gym. I learned so much. And not just about business, about people, about myself, about the way the world works. And so I would never undo it, you know, if given the chance, even though I don't consider it a success business-wise. If somebody said, you know, would you go back and just tell yourself not to? Absolutely not. Okay. I needed to learn those things to get to the next step.
You paid in terms of time, money.
Absolutely.
And sweat equity.
Yep.
Okay.
Well worth it.
And that education, like looking back, you didn't get a traditional education.
Nope.
So looking back, would you say that was well worth it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the thing that caused you to transition out of that business?
I think it was definitely a little bit of burnout.
Okay.
I mean, just that pace is not sustainable. And
4 to 10 every day, definitely not.
I'm not a morning person. Like 8 a.m. is fine. 4 a.m. will never be okay with me, ever.
Okay.
So it was a little bit of that, and it was a little bit that I'd like to think I'm smart enough to know when to throw in the towel. Like, tell me I can't, I'll show you I can, I'll do it. But now that I've done it, I'm not stupid. I'm not a masochist. I'm not going to keep doing it if we're hemorrhaging money and it's obviously not going anywhere good. Okay. And so there came a time in Vermont, our winter's like 2 weeks. Or I mean, our summer is like 2 weeks. Sorry, not winter.
Winter's like 9 months.
That's, like real summer, really, realistically, I mean, it's 2 months. But we are aware of that. And so everybody goes outside. So all of my gym goers, I had 400 over the course of the year. So I had 400 members.
Okay. That's actually pretty healthy.
It was wonderful.
How many square foot was the facility?
Oh, gosh. I don't remember. It was good size.
Okay.
I mean, I got all new equipment. I did it all right. I was so proud of it. So
Okay.
when you talk about the Instagram society, the shiny images, I
Yeah,
have those.
you have all that.
It looks
Okay.
great. And it was great. But I also have a background in finance, and I could see the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
I would say one of the biggest lessons I learned is, and I can't say that you can turn it off, but I'm a bleeding heart, and you can't do that in business.
Yes.
And so there's a reason that in fitness centers, you sign up for a year and it's cheaper. It's because they want the recurring revenue.
Right.
You know, because everybody wants to go out in the summer, which I did, except that when somebody came to me and they were like, oh gosh, you know, money's really tight. I'm a school teacher. I don't get paid in the summer. Oh no, don't worry about it.
It's very difficult to operate both a charity and a business
Exactly.
within one infrastructure.
Exactly.
Yeah, I totally get that. When you look at your background in numbers, though, like, so you were reviewing your numbers pretty regularly.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Now, the vast majority of business owners don't do that.
Yes, that I know now too.
Exactly. If you had to account for a particular way to look at numbers to make sure that you're making informed decisions, what would your tips and tricks be?
One of the biggest things I tell people in the business that I'm in now is look at more than your profit and loss. Because typically
That
that's
doesn't
what
tell you
business
everything.
owners know,
Exactly.
right? Like they're like, oh, I have a profit and loss and I have a really good month last month.
Yeah.
It's a piece of the puzzle. It's literally like trying to put a puzzle together with half the pieces missing.
Yes.
So there's obviously the balance sheet stuff, but then there's the forecasting and the cash flow management. You can't just say I had a good month.
Right.
There's no guarantee unless it's truly recurring revenue, like that's your whole business model, even then, that's going to continue. And you have to have a certain amount saved up for the lean months or, I mean, stuff happens, right?
Oh, yeah.
2008 happened. It happened more than once. It's going to happen again eventually. You can't just rely on a good month to determine the success of your business. There's a lot more to that picture. And I got really excited. I had money in the bank and people were coming. And I was doing all the personal training and it was filling me up as a person.
Right.
You know, it lit me up. I was never happier. And then the money stopped and I realized that with those operating costs, I had never run a business before. I had run other people's. But when that
But
money
it's different
runs
when it's
out,
your checking account.
yeah.
Yes.
I was shocked at how quickly it goes away. Just a few months. And it's like, oh. And I knew that I had tapped out every resource I could to get the doors open. Because I didn't have traditional funding. So it's not like I had people or resources that I could be like, hey, I'm in a jam. Can you support me? Can you float me over the summer? I'll be fine again in the fall. And at that point, it was sucking the life out of me too. And it was a decision. It was even if the business could rebound, I can't. This is not what I'm meant to be doing. I was a little foolish and kind of pushing through when I probably should have paused a little more, maybe listened to those people I'd asked for their advice.
Yeah, that persistence keeps entrepreneurs going. Sometimes a
Too
tad
far.
too long.
Yes. Yes.
So the way I talk about it is I talk about it's not failure unless you quit.
Right.
So if you never quit, you have never failed. But that doesn't mean you don't pivot. And you got to a point where you saw the writing on the wall.
Time to pivot.
Yeah. So what was that pivot?
Well, I had an unfortunate series of events. I had really, really debilitating back problems at the time, and I needed a back surgery.
Okay.
And so at that point, you know, with the divorce and the loss of my house and 50% custody of my child and my business failing and my health failing, I really kind of threw in the towel and just focused on my health at that point.
Okay.
You know, I tried to sell the business, but by the time I tried to sell, I didn't know how much time it took to do that, and it wasn't an option. So we filed bankruptcy and paid off everything that we could, you know, but the rent, I mean, we weren't going to finish out our lease. But, you know, we kept the mortgage payments and the car, basically everything that we could to be accountable. But I was kind of in a dark place at that point. It felt like the world was kind of crumbling around me, and I couldn't walk, physically couldn't walk. And so I did the surgery and really kind of focused on my health and my recovery. And then when that happened, took a step back and said, okay, what do I want to do? And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I knew what I didn't want to do.
What was that?
I will never own another business as long as I live.
That's the decision you made.
I will
of
never
do
do
it.
this again. Like, thank you for the lessons. I can't. And I really wanted something that was both schedule and brain power wise. I needed a recovery period. I needed to take a year and do something that
buffer.
wasn't up here all the time. And so I became a job developer
Okay.
for people with developmental disabilities,
Okay.
which is, it's a tough role. I mean, not everybody's open to hiring those folks, which is a shame. Obviously, they're wonderful, and I could go on that. But so I did that for a year because it also filled me up, you know, in that feel-good kind of way.
Sense of purpose.
Sense of purpose, feeling good about what I had accomplished in any given day. But I was still a single mom, and social work doesn't pay well, and I needed to put food on the table. So once again, I was like, okay, well, this isn't sustainable. There's got to be a balance between feeling good and eating,
Yes.
you know, and having a nice place to live, right? And so it took me a while to kind of figure out what that was, and I met this very charismatic man who was clearly passionate about what he did and got me into financial advising and life insurance.
Okay.
So I got licensed to sell life, health, and disability.
Okay.
And I joined this big name company doing some financial. I didn't get certified as a financial advisor, but you know, kind of helping them plan, I would say, for retirement and stuff like that, and then obviously being able to sell the products.
Okay.
And so we got into that, and I quickly realized it's a very broken system. It's filled with a lot of white men over a certain age who have been doing the same thing for a long time and don't want to do it a different way. It's commission-based. That was my first commission job, and I will never be one of those people. I understand why it happens, but there was a lot of people selling products that were not in the best interest of their clients because it was a bigger payday for them. And so I have a very strong moral compass, and like I said, I'm a bleeding heart. I had a really hard time. That said, it was the first year I broke six figures. I was good at it.
Yeah.
And I think because the relationship piece came back in, because people felt like I did have their best interests at heart, and I did. Yeah.
Share where you were coming from, making sure you understood where they were.
Yeah.
And you added value.
Yep. And so somehow that all worked out, except that I was surrounded by people who weren't. And then the better I did, the more they wanted to start doing joint business and kind of doing that. And I actually got talked to by the owner of the company who was like, you really need to push our products, not other people's. And I was like, but what if they're not right?
Right.
And obviously it wasn't said, right?
Yeah,
it was implied.
It's an implication.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. And so the guy that recruited me, he's like, we should start our own firm. And I was like, yeah, let's do that, you know, because I'm making money and I like what I'm doing and I'm helping people. Okay. But I don't like these other guys. I don't like what they're doing. I don't want to be around it. So we launched what became my second business, which was really going to be built on financial education. Okay. And there was still products, so we'd still have the commission. Okay. But it was really more focused on the education.
And what year was this? This was in 2013. Okay.
You know, so my pact to never own a business lasted less than 2 years.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
But this was different because I was like, well, but this is with a partner. So, you know, there's shared financial investment, there's shared, and he's experienced and he's smart and he knew the business side. He knew how to develop the products and I knew the people and the systems. And I've always been very maternal and nurturing. And so when we walked from this very big company, 8 people came with us. So it was like a walk. It was kind of a big deal. So we had like 10 of us right from the get-go. And we got this great office space, very rustic, you know, just good vibe. People would say it when they came in. And I kind of organically took the role on training the team. You know, here's what we're going to do. We had to, because we got to invent all of these new systems. And at this point, I hadn't realized that also lights me up. I'm a super nerd. If I can color code it and alphabetize it and like make it efficient. And so I got to do that. I'm like, okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to develop this intake form, and then we're going to do this. Okay, you know what we need at this point in the process? We really need either a meeting or a form or a whatever.
So efficiency of onboarding.
Yes.
Going through systematization of everything.
Yes. So I got to do all that. And I said to my partner pretty early, and I was like, but how am I going to get paid? Because we're commission-based, and I'm not getting paid for any of this. And he's like, don't worry about it. I got you. I'm going to go out, and I'm going to do all the really big cases, get the big commission, and feed the business and us. And it'll take care of your pay and mine. We're going to be so set. Don't worry. Okay. Great. Okay. So and I still saw clients during this time. Okay. But I was advising them, and I can't lie.
Right.
I don't have a poker face to save my life. So if a product was not what they needed, I did not recommend it.
Exactly.
And if they needed somebody other than me, I made the referral.
Right.
Long story short, I made $11,000 that year.
Oh.
Still a single mom.
Going from 6 figures to 11 grand
in 1 year.
Not a pleasant experience.
It was not.
Okay.
I, at some point, was paying rent on my credit cards. And with financial knowledge, I
know
knew better.
Yeah.
I also didn't feel like I had a choice. With my daughter being young, I wasn't willing to, stay in a shelter, or I know these things are available,
Right.
but I was so set on sparing her from any kind of hardship, and so I just kept putting it on the credit card, and it was crushing. I am not somebody who likes debt. I never have. I grew up in a lot of debt, and so I use that as a what not to do. Okay,
Right.
this doesn't feel good. This level of uncertainty doesn't feel good to me. How can I never experience that again? So I was a saver. I was a planner, but I did not have any resources to tap, and I didn't want to lose our place. So I just kept racking this up, going, something will come. I will figure out a way. And in about 14 months, we brought in an attorney to do a buy-sell agreement with us. And my partner, Chris, he said, "Mark, this is Julie. She's my right arm." And without missing a beat, Mark said, "I need a right arm. Where do I get a right arm?" And in my head, I went, "I made $11,000 this year. Let's talk.
Yeah.
Let's have a conversation." And we did. We had a conversation. And at this point, the partnership wasn't going really well. It wasn't terrible, but it became very clear that his vision for the future of our company and mine were very different things. He was going this way, and there was no middle ground. But I didn't want it to end like the last one.
Right.
So I basically just said, "I'm out." Okay. We didn't have, there wasn't a lot put in, and what was he had spent. So there wasn't I owe you, or there's a buyout or anything. It was let's make this a parting of ways. You keep what we've built here, and I just need to go make some money. I need to support my family. So I had a conversation with Mark, and it turns out he was a fabulous attorney, so good at what he does, a master connector, absolutely atrocious at running his business. And I can say this because I tell him to his face. We meet every 2 weeks, and I tell him often, and I adore him. We still work together to this day. But he didn't have systems. He didn't have organization. He loved the relationship and would forget to bill. So financially, it wasn't as successful as it could be because he was literally forgetting to bill, or if he remembered to bill, he'd forget to follow up, and people would learn this. You teach them how to treat you, and they just wouldn't pay in a timely manner. And I was not having that. I was not having that at all. And that was where the maternal thing came in. He was older than me, but I was like, no, I'm going to take care of this. Yeah. You go out and do what you do. I will fix all of this. But do it in a nice way. You don't have to be unpleasant, even with collections, And so we joke to this day. He says the year he hired me, it was the best year he'd ever had, and he's been in business for decades. And then I always follow up with, it's not because I made you make more, it's because I actually collected on what you earned. Yeah. That's all I did.
Yeah, we talk about that. What we do, we call it plugging the profit leaks. Yeah. There's so many leaks that business owners have within their enterprise. Yeah. And you just have to figure out how to keep it, whether that's on the side of taxation, whether that's the side of just operations and overhead. Yeah. Figuring out how to collect on the money that you're owed in an efficient and effective manner definitely can lead to outcomes that you desire.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that's how kind of organically the third business came to be, because I had still sworn off businesses, especially after the second one. I was like, okay, note to self, it's no better with a partner than it is solo. Okay, we're not doing that again. Okay. And I worked with Mark, and he was also a bleeding heart, and I don't know that he knows that I know, but he would invent work for me to do. Okay. So that I would have more. He kept me busy.
So you operated that as almost like an independent contractor.
I did.
You came in, stepped in, and helped as an independent contractor. Yep. What gave you the idea to make that a business?
I didn't. He did.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I got in, over the course of the couple of years we worked together, we dabbled in, we organized his office. We did, obviously the bookkeeping was huge. His website was like circa 1980. And so I ended up doing his website, and he was using social media for both business and personal. And I was like, oh, no. So I did really whatever he needed.
Right.
Like he didn't know what he needed, and I would just kind of discover it. And I was like, oh no, we can't do that.
Right.
So all the systems and all of that. And he said to me one day, he's like, you could make a business out of this whole right arm thing.
Yes.
He's like, I work. So he is a business attorney. He sets up LLCs and things like that. He's like, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs. They all need you. Okay. They don't know they need you, but they all need you.
Yes.
And I was like, yeah, that's interesting. Okay. And at this point I was in a new relationship. I was engaged, and I was pregnant with my second daughter.
Okay.
And so the idea of going back into the workforce when you're pregnant is really difficult.
Yes.
Because you're going to need maternity leave. And so he started introducing me to people. Before I had even really said, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. He had started, I started getting these email introductions.
Okay.
And in very, very short time, it was a full-time gig.
Yes.
It was like, oh my gosh. And it was wonderful.
Right.
Because I could do it from my couch.
Right.
I mean, I was just I would meet with them.
Doing something you love.
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
I love organizing other people. And so what I realized is I was addicted to that startup energy, that fire in the belly of like, I'm starting something and I'm developing all of this. It took my third business to realize I don't have to keep starting businesses to feel that.
Exactly.
I can jump on with other people and live vicariously through them.
I love it.
And help them with the things that may not be in their genius zone.
Exactly.
Which I also didn't realize until way later. I just assumed that thing that I have that makes me want to alphabetize and organize and color code is innate in everybody. I did not realize that's not what everybody likes to do.
Exactly.
And so there was a need for what I was doing, and it just took off. And then at one point, fast forwarding again, our daughter was born, and I stayed home for a year. It allowed me to stay home and be a stay-at-home mom for a year. Stay-at-home mom, I was still pulling the hours.
Yeah,
it was just very
now
flexible.
You're in the home, and you can work at your own pace and at your own time frame.
Exactly. And then it got to a place where I'm like, I am not cut out to be a stay-at-home mom. I love my kids very, very much, but it's the hardest job, to this day, hardest job I've ever done. Forget starting a business, forget bankruptcy, all of that. Stay-at-home moms, that's where it's at. That's the hardest job. But I said to my husband, who was unhappy in his engineering job at the time, I can support us. If I can get these extra hours that I still wasn't fully working, you could stay home if you want to. Because he was intrigued, he wanted to try it. And so he stayed home for 9 months.
Wow.
And that was the first moment that I felt successful. It's like, I am supporting a family of 4. We have a house, we have a nice house, we have a mortgage, we have things, and there's food on the table, and it's because of me.
Wow.
And I'll never forget that feeling. It was incredible. He ended up also deciding that he's not meant to be a stay-at-home parent after 9 months and went back into the workforce. But it's just grown since then, and I get to be part of that energy every day for people that are so passionate about what they do, but are so at a loss for the behind-the-scenes stuff. They just, no exaggeration, a lot of them come to me in tears.
Okay.
Just, I should, that word, I should know how to run a business. I've been in business for 2 years. I should know if I'm profitable. I should know if I can bring on an employee. I should.
Right.
Why? You are so good at what you do. Why should you know how to, do you have a business degree? I don't either, but
you have the experience.
Right. But did you take classes? I mean, why should you know? And it turns out most of them would kind of take a breath after that. They had never gotten permission, never had a safe space to have someone say, you shouldn't know how to do everything.
Exactly.
There's support for that. There are people who do this. You do what only you can do. You do what lights you up. That's a good use of your time. All the rest, there are people for that.
Yeah, the way we talked about it is that there are 7 words that every entrepreneur needs to learn. Find the who to implement the how.
Yes.
Find the who to implement the how. Because
100%.
You don't have to be the one who does all the hows within your business.
No.
Focus on your zone of genius and outsource the rest. Outsource or even insource.
Sure.
Whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But the power of teams in an enterprise are what take you from being a solopreneur And most solopreneurs, the vast majority of them, max out at very low six figures.
Yep.
That just is what it is.
Yep.
But as soon as you layer on leverage through labor and technology, those two sources of leverage are amazing.
Yeah, and you don't have to go it alone, and
Definitely not.
Nobody should, and that's probably the conversation that I have more often than not now. When people ask me what I do, for a while I was saying I'm an entrepreneurial therapist, because forget the actual stuff that I do.
Right.
What most of these people need is to talk. Entrepreneurship is isolating.
Yes.
And if you've never started a business, you don't know that. That's not obvious to the outside world. You get the, it must be nice to work whenever you want, keep all the money. And
if you only knew.
If you only knew. It's super isolating because you're doing all of it yourself because you feel like you should, or because you don't have the cash flow. I've had people say, well, I'd love to hire. I can't afford.
Yeah, if they don't even know the operational numbers.
Right.
Understanding how to make those decisions.
Yep. They're like, there's $500 in my bank account. I could never afford to hire somebody. There's the conversation about the time value of money, right? Like, what do you think you could earn in an hour? Okay, what do you think you could pay a bookkeeper or somebody to do your social media? You know, and usually there's a gap there.
There's always going to be a cost.
Yeah,
there's
of
always a
course.
cost. You're either paying with your own personal time.
Yes.
And when you're paying with your time, you can't be utilizing that time to invest in other things that are more profitable within that particular enterprise, or just more profitable to you holistically.
Right.
Whether you're talking about within your personal life, relationships, doing the things you want to do. So you're always paying. So just be smart with how you pay. Choose wisely how you invest either your time and or money to get the outcomes you desire.
Yeah. I mean, time is a finite resource. You can always go make more money.
Absolutely.
There's money to be
Money
had.
is truly abundant.
Time? No.
Once it's gone, it's gone.
Yep.
Invest it wisely. Looking at what you're doing now.
Yep.
Tell me what does the typical day look like for you?
There's a lot of variety,
Okay.
which I love and I need.
Okay.
But now, so over the last 7, almost 8 years since I started this by accident, it's now me and 6 other people.
Okay.
And so I've gotten to really dive into what is the best use of my time. Because I was operating very much as, the cobbler's kid who has no shoes, of very reactive. I would basically be a slave to email. Well, what do my clients need today? That's what I'm doing, obviously. And I didn't have a time block or a schedule. I'm really just doing whatever appointments landed on my calendar and responding to emails, whatever they need. And I got to a place where there was borderline burnout again. There was this really, it was sad for me because I love what I do, but I was getting to that place of like, I would dread work the next day. And I'm like, no, time out. I'm not doing this. Like, right. I love what I do. I know this is my calling. And if I'm not loving it, it's self-inflicted. It's the schedule that I'm keeping. It's this answering emails on my phone 24/7. It's not being present for my family and having the mom guilt thing. But I can fix all of those things. I am in control of this. And so I have a team. Why am I doing things that are either not a good use of my time or I don't enjoy? I have people.
Yes.
And they like those things. It's not like I'm giving them the work that I don't want to do.
Exactly.
They like those things. They are looking for hours. I'm taking from them.
Exactly.
So I made a list of all of the things that I have to do. Then I made a list I highlighted what has to be me and what could be someone else. And that had to be done a couple times, right? Because at first you're like, oh no, only I can do that. There's a little ego involved. And I never thought I had an ego. Turns out I had an ego. It's like, okay, time out. Why couldn't somebody, sure, you might have to train them. You might have to create a training video and whatever, but there's no reason only you can do those things.
It's kind of like you have a to-do list, but what's more important is the not to-do list.
Yes. So that was really eye-opening, literally highlighting them. I think it was blue and purple. And then separating them. Okay, this is the stuff that only I can do. And then what are the things that I want to do? Are there things on here that I could still, even if nobody on my team could do it, could I hire somebody to do it? Could I automate it somehow? How can I take off anything I don't want to do? So I'm really left with what I love to do and that I have to do.
The ideal scenario.
It was amazing.
Okay.
And so I figured out, what can I delegate? What can I automate? And then it happened to be that the things that were left that only I can do, I love to do. So all new clients come through me. I'm the triage for Genesis Consulting. So, and that's not even so much a control thing anymore. It's just I really love to meet people. I learn about new businesses every day. I'm like, that's a business? That's genius. But I didn't know that was a thing. So I love hearing about their story. And that's part of that kind of intake. And then I can kind of figure out, A, are we the best fit for you? And if yes, who on my team is the best fit? What do you need? And kind of bring them in. So there's that. So that happens at least once a day. There's a few discovery calls. I do all of the training for entrepreneurs who want to do the things that we offer, whether it's for cash flow or because they feel they need to see every aspect of the finances. They want to do it, but they don't feel comfortable. They don't feel confident. And again, why should they?
Exactly.
They've never done this before. I love teaching. I didn't know that about myself, but I really love that. So introducing them to their system in a new way and teaching them that it doesn't have to be hard or scary or painful.
Right.
There are ways, like, let me show you how to do this in a way that's not terrible.
Exactly.
It won't take you long, and you might even enjoy it.
Right.
And even if you don't, you'll be able to read your financial reports with confidence. You'll have the clarity you need to make those business decisions, and you'll sleep at night.
Absolutely.
Because how many entrepreneurs don't sleep at night because of
of
financial stuff, right? So I get to do all the coaching. And that's the bulk of it. Between that and, supporting my team in what they're doing. And then, of course, the marketing piece, getting out there and sharing with people what I do and who I am and what we can offer. That's the way I spend my days. But I work maybe 28 hours a week now.
Okay.
And that's totally by choice. That's my kids are young and time is finite and they're not going to be here forever.
Exactly.
And there also will be a stage where they are here and they don't want to spend time with mom. Right. And so I'm going to really capitalize on this opportunity and spend every minute they will have me and be present and make dinners and do those things because that's what's important to me now. I can go back to 40 hours or whatever eventually if I choose to, but I want to be healthy and in all the ways. I want to have hobbies and I want to have relationships, and my success doesn't have to cost that.
I get it.
It's a really good place to be. And teaching other people that, man, nothing better.
Julie, we are so alike in what our goals and objectives are with regard to business. And I think, one, we serve a lot of the same type of customers and in a lot of the same types of ways. It's one of the reasons why I really wanted to make sure we sat down and had this conversation. If looking at what you do on a traditional basis, day in and day out, is there any one particular thing you think most business owners are currently unaware of that they should be aware of in order to take their business to the next level? Like, is there one thing that is your go-to punch? Like, everyone should be doing this.
Yes. And I'll refrain from using the actual tool, but there is a system that keeps track of everything you need to remember. So people have lists, or they have even assistants who take care of those things. I don't even think that's enough, right? So we have so many things. And I say we, I don't mean entrepreneurs even, I mean people. How many of the things in your life do you have to remember to do on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis? Somebody's got to make the vet visits, the dentist appointments, So I will say Asana is the tool that I use, but it's entirely free. But keeping everything out of your head will change your life, I promise.
100% I agree.
The mental real estate, the ruminating in the car, the sleepless nights, did I do that? Did I ever respond to the kid's teacher about...
It's beautiful to see the project move from board to board to board in Asana and say, oh, yes, I completed this.
And it's got the recurring capability. So if it's something you have to do annually, who's going to remember?
And aside from April 15th,
version. Right?
Exactly. So that's a free version that's available to everyone. If you want to upgrade and pay the paid version, you get a couple new features to it. But ultimately, it's just a methodology by which to say...
To organize your life.
Get it out of my head.
Yes.
So that, and the beauty is when you have a team... Everyone can be given view access so they can see it. They can help move things along for you. Beautiful.
It's value to everybody. On those days that you're like, I didn't sleep at all and there's not enough caffeine in the world to get me through this day, to go in and have your day planned out, but also have the step-by-step instructions for how to do it so that you don't have to think.
Yes.
Is amazing. And like you said, when I hired my team, I did this before the team. When I got to enough clients where it's like, there's a lot of balls in the air, I'm going to drop something. I need to have something remind me, how often do I do it for this person versus this person? And which things do I do? And so I've built them out with everything I need to know, the step-by-step instructions. I mean, down to click next, click submit. I mean, it's everything. And then I went so far as to create training videos. So when somebody would say, hey, Jules, how do you do this? I'd create a short Loom video. And then I got the idea, what if I save that to the task?
Oh, yes.
Now for my visual learners, I have the video, I have the step-by-step, I have everything.
I love it.
And when I trained staff, it was revolutionary because what took me weeks of training before,
you have it all laid out for them.
and it wasn't like, here, welcome to Genesis, you're on your own, here are your tasks, but they can rewatch them. And so that organizes, and then I started doing it for other areas. You know, I'm a member of BNI, and so I have my things that I have to do in my current role as vice president. You know, I have to send this email and I have to schedule this, and so now I have a board for that. And then I've got a board for the Genesis stuff, because again, still have no shoes. What do I want to do on the website? What new products or services do I want to launch? What idea did I have at 3 o'clock this morning that I need to flesh out a little bit? That has its own space. And now my brain, being less full, I'm able to be more present, and I don't know a single person who couldn't use more presence.
Wow. I agree with that.
It's huge.
Wow.
I would tell anybody, like, even if you don't have a business, even if you do business for other people, if you don't have a system like that.
Organizational, timekeeping, everything. Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I loved our conversation so far.
Too.
One of the things I ask guests to do is to join me in a little bit of a thought exercise. So I wouldn't, hopefully you wouldn't mind doing this.
Of course
not. I'd like you to imagine for a moment that you have the capability of going back in time to meeting a younger version of you. What I'd like to know is, what version of you would you go back to? And if you could share just one thing with that version of you, what would it be?
That's an excellent question. I could go back to lots of different places and the same advice would be relevant, but I would go back to probably around 8-year-old me.
Okay.
And say, it's not your job to fix everything.
Okay.
You don't have to fix everything for everyone. And I say 8 because that's about the time I think I started trying to fix things, trying to make people's days better if I knew they were struggling. But I could do that probably even now.
Yeah.
When I see somebody struggling, I want to fix it.
Right.
Whether it's a resource or a hug or whatever it is that they need. And that's heavy.
Yes.
To feel that.
That burden of being the fixer is a challenging one. Yeah. To take with you in all aspects of what you're doing, whether it's in business, whether it's in your personal life. That is emotionally draining.
Yep. Time
consuming.
Yeah. So and unrealistic.
Completely unrealistic. You
but
can't
I went
fix
through
everything.
Decades of my life feeling like nobody's going to do this if I don't. I have to fix this.
You have to be the one, right?
Yeah, you don't have to fix it.
Okay. So there's a second portion of this thought exercise. So I want you to imagine then for a moment that a future version of you comes back in this moment where we're sitting here having this conversation, and she has the opportunity to tell you something. What does she tell you?
I think she would say, you are more than enough, and you always have been.
Awesome.
Because we all suffer from that imposter syndrome.
Oh, yes.
And it's something that has kept me from experiences and opportunities, that fear of they're going to see right through me. They're going to know I don't have a college degree, and I have no right to be here doing this thing. Or, I mean, all of those, you know. And you have it in every area, in relationships and parenting and all of that. But I think we are, and it'll feel good and whatever, but I think we are enough. I think that we've always been enough, and that variety, if you knew everything, you wouldn't need other people. And 100%. How awful would that be?
It would be lonely.
It would be so lonely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So a younger version of you got some advice.
Yeah.
The present version of you got some advice.
Yeah.
I don't want to leave the audience out.
Yeah.
Let's say, what is one thing you want to make sure that they take home with them after having an opportunity to consume this content? What's one thing they should know?
Don't do it alone.
Okay.
There are people out there. There are resources. You shouldn't. Don't should on yourself. You should not be doing this alone. It takes a village.
Wonderful. Yeah. Julie, how can the audience reach out to you? How can they get in touch with you if they want to learn more about you and what you're doing? What's the best way for them to do that?
Probably my website.
Okay.
My social media links are on there, but it's genesisconsultingcorp.com. And they can get in touch. I think my phone number's on there, email, and there's even a link for the discovery call if they want to connect and book a meeting. And
I'm going to definitely make sure that information's in the show notes. So
thank you.
This has been such an amazing conversation. I appreciate you being willing to share so authentically with us, and it's an amazing story. I'm so happy for you and what you've been able to accomplish, but you know what? I'm even more excited for what you're going to be able to accomplish in the years to come.
Thank you.
Just keep going, keep doing what you're doing, keep changing lives, one life at a time, and you'll get there.
Thank you so much for having me. This is wonderful.
Well, it's definitely been a pleasure, and I hope you have enjoyed it. In fact, you know what? I know you have. And because of that, I want to make sure that you do something. Hit that thumbs up button because it will really help me with the algorithm. And 2, you're going to want to hit that notification bell because you're not going to want to miss what's coming next. Julie Goodall, I wish you well. Edward Collins, once again, for Entrepreneur Unleashed. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Bye for now. Julie, that was amazing. Thank you so much for coming out and doing this.
This is great.
This has been so much fun.
Oh, when I learned why you do what you do, I was like, this is it. Like,
This is
I literally try to